So hello everyone, and welcome to this live panel discussion on growth recipe advanced analytics for startups. My name is Parag, and I work as a product marketer at Hebo. I'll be your host and moderator for this session. First of all, I want to thank all the attendees for joining us today, and special thanks to our panelists. So before we start, I would like to remind you of a few things. All attendees will be on listen only mode. We are going to record this session and we'll be sending you the recording by email. If you have any questions during the webinar or this session, then you can type in your questions in the Q&A window available on your screen during the session itself, and we will address them at the end of the session one by one. So before we start, let me give you a quick intro about Hebo. So Hebo is an automated no-code data pipeline platform that helps data-driven businesses integrate their data silos, and it provides analytics-ready data in minutes. So it helps you basically connect, transform, and load your data spread across 100 plus different data sources that can include databases, SaaS applications, cloud storages, streaming services, all into a data warehouse. So now this unified data that you have in your data warehouse that can be easily connected with any BI tool for reporting or analytics purpose. For more detail about Hebo, you can visit our website www.hebodata.com and sign up for our free trial there. Now with this introduction, let me quickly introduce our panel. So we have with us Goda Ramakumar. Thank you, Goda, for joining with us. Goda Ramakumar is AVP Data Science at Swiggy and ranked as one of the top 10 data scientists in India by Analytics India magazine in 2018. Prior to Swiggy, she was General Manager Data Science at X210X Technologies, establishing data science journey and practices in the startup ecosystem. Previously, she was at Ola for 2 years as a principal data scientist, and prior to that, she worked at Sabre for 10 years. She has several publications and presentations in industry journals and academic conferences. She holds an undergraduate and master's degree from IIT Madras. So that's about Goda. Now our next panelist is Dipayan Chakrabarti. Welcome, Dipayan, to the panel. Dipayan has over 17 years of experience in driving business transformation using analytics and data science. Currently, he heads the analytics and business intelligence function at Myntra and leads a team of 45 data scientists, business analysts, and fraud prevention executives to deliver data-backed solutions. So he has also worked at pre-seed startups, global MNCs, Indian conglomerates, and VC-funded tech startups. Prior to Myntra, he worked at Flipkart, Tech, HSBC, and Marketix. He is a nationally recognized analytics leader, delivered workshops, seminars at several leading analytics conferences across India and Southeast Asia. He is an IIM Ahmedabad alumni and a guest lecturer at several MBA and PG analytics institutes. Welcome, Dipayan. Now introducing our third panelist, who is Ankur Sharma. Welcome, Ankur. He's the third, he's the head of analytics and user growth at InstaMojo. InstaMojo is an on-demand payments and commerce platform for micro, small, and medium enterprises. So prior to InstaMojo, he led analytics teams at Capital One and Kiwi Inclusive, which is a Sequoia-funded gaming startup. He has over 11 years of experience in the data analytics space. And he has also done a lot of project management, growth hacking, in various domains, including banking, mobile gaming, fintech, and SaaS. All right. So with this introduction, I welcome all the panelists. And without any further ado, let me start with our today's discussion. So we all know that startups are equally exhilarating and exhausting. So the possibilities are endless. So many things must be put in place And in this race, often, data analytics is sidelined. Founders understand the importance of analytics, but most of them don't know where to start as far as the building the analytics infrastructure is concerned. The data analytics is surprisingly easy way to fast track information gathering that helps everyone within the organization make accurate and faster business decisions. And most important thing is that it takes out the guesswork. So generating a humongous, we're currently generating a humongous amount of data in today's digital businesses. And that has become a new normal now. So every transaction generates data. So leveraging big data and its analytics in a hyper competitive landscape is extremely essential for driving business growth. And we all know that. That's the reason why we are here discussing this topic. Our today's panelists, Goda, Dipayan, and Ankur, have a strong experience in handling the entire analytics infrastructure at startup and big organization. So I would like to start this discussion by asking a very generic question at the start. So as we know today, data availability is one of the biggest issues that companies face. And most of the employees often complain about not having access to right data at the right time for decision making, or maybe some actions that they need to take on their day-to-day job. So what's your perspective on this, and how do you tackle this problem at your company? Maybe I would like to start with Dipayan first.
Yeah, Parag, so can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and it's a very common problem across startups because see, what do people mean by data availability, right? In the technical terms, what it means is that the source tech system. So let's say, for instance, it's an e-commerce company, the order management system, the shipment management system, the warehouse management system. The data that they're generating is getting stored in some local database, right? Which is in the OMS itself, basis which the operational reports are getting published out and so on and so forth. Right? For analysis purposes, that data in a raw format or an aggregated format needs to be put into a common platform where, because a production database, you should not give access to analysts to a production database because incorrect use of a production database might just result in the system going down itself. So you need to have an ingestion pipeline which goes into the data platform and all the data gets collected, and the data team takes the data from multiple sources and creates aggregates which have a 360-degree view of a order or a customer, right? That needs engineering bandwidth. And in a startup's initial first 3 or 4 years, engineering bandwidth is potentially the most precious commodity that a startup has. And pretty much all of that engineering bandwidth is eaten up in growth, right? So there you're ignoring creation of the ingestion pipelines. So how we call it is data is not treated as a first-class citizen. Data is treated as a second-class citizen. First is a transaction system need to be set up. So that's the reason. And see, the fix is also obvious to everybody. The CTO is aware of it, as you said. The CEO is aware of it. The CTO is aware of it. The CPO is aware of it. It's just that at that point in time, they cannot take a call, or they are scared to take a call of diverting engineering resources to creating an ingestion pipeline, creating a database. Now, hopefully, companies like yours can make that, and others can make that journey simpler by creating, like, let's say, no-code data pipeline, right? Where you do not need, let's say, a lot of precious engineering resources being invested in creation of those ingestion data lines. Once that comes in, there are other technologies also. There is a lot of querying now available on a data lake where people are saying you don't really need to create very complicated ingestion pipelines. Just dump all the raw data into a data lake. And at Myntra, for example, we use an engine called Bifrost to query the data lake directly for most of our queries, and we're even scheduling jobs on that. Right? So as technologies move towards not needing, so initially like 5-6 years back, our analytics teams needed data in a very structured, aggregated format for us to be building analytic, assets on top of that. As that requirement goes away, as you can do it more and more on unstructured raw data or create ingestion pipelines very easily, I think that problem will get solved. But the senior management needs to have this mindset that this is going to be a problem when I scale from 0 to 1 to 1 to X. So I better start solving it right at the point zero itself.
Got it. Goda, what's your take on this?
I think, Deepan put it very well as to, it's not an unknown, this problem that it exists, across the startup ecosystem. It's more of the choice, and it's also the right choice in terms of when you're in that phase as to transactional systems taking your engineering bandwidth. So when I was working with so many startups, when I was at X2 10X, the very first thing that we did before setting up the data science function is to kind of set up the data platform, right? Because if you don't have that platform in between, acting as a bridge between the data generators and the data users, your data scientist who joins will not be kind of useful or functional for the organization. And while doing that, we kind of adopted both kinds of approaches. One is kind of looking for products like Hivo, where a code system help you bring it up quickly. And also at other places, it was also kind of assembling the data platform out of many kind of open source applications available, because it's not only important to bring all the data in one place, it's also important to have the metadata behind the data as to what it means, right? Especially when it's coming from so many systems, and for the analysts to be able to map it to each other and really come up with the joints, you need to know what each field means, and the quality of the data is trustable. So there were also those supporting systems that we had to kind of build. But that said, I think before you hire your analytics and data scientists and ask for impact, I think data platform is kind of the basic need that needs to be satisfied at a startup.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would like to ask a different question, Ankur. So now we talked about the data availability as a challenge, which is a very generic. Now I want to sort of compare how were the things 10 years back or maybe 5 years back with respect to the analytics spectrum. So my question is, like, how do you see the shift happening today in the analytics industry per se, or data and analytics industry per se, as compared to last decade or a half a decade?
Sure. I think in last 10 years, a lot of things have changed, especially the computing power has become much more easily available and also much more accessible to a lot more people. I think 10 years back, the infrastructure team was separate, the data engineering team was separate. A lot of things were in-house built, and the budgets that you need to really spend to get an analytics system done was like very, really high. And it was really hard for a startup to really afford to do analytics 10 years back, because the kind of data platform setting up will set you back a pretty big time. So I think that has changed a lot, where tools are now much more accessible, they are much more cost effective, and they're also much more in the grip of analysts. As mentioned by Deepan and Goda, it's now possible to do a lot of data platform work, a lot of data engineering work without really involving engineering, as well as not really having a lot of technical chops. A lot of the new age tools, especially the cloud-based tools, are getting simpler and making sure that an analyst with limited knowledge of programming can also, like set up a full-blown analytical system, all the way from ingesting data from multiple places to finally creating an insightful outcome, which can then be presented and turned into actionables. So I feel like over a period of time, these changes have made data analytics much more accessible to not only general to companies of all the spectrum. Basically, even if you are a one-person startup, you can do a lot in terms of data without really needing a team of multiple people or spending a ton of money to get those platforms up and running.
Absolutely. So my next question is to Deepan. So like Ankur shared, today we have a lot of modern tools that are available that can simplify the entire, data integration, aggregation, processing, everything faster. I mean, the turnaround time has drastically reduced, right? So the way earlier we used to spend almost a day's time to, process data and create reports, now we get it almost in real time, right? So having said that, coming back to my first question on, data availability, do you think like these modern tools have changed the current scenario with respect to the way we are making, way the companies are making data available to all the employees?
See, any change in the tool set will obviously result or at least make the behavior change more possible. But the answer to your question, Parag, is see, the data availability even earlier was not really a blocker because of tools, right? So, for instance, I could just give everybody a Tableau report, and that tool would be, that data would be available to them. I could put data in a Power BI server and have 10 concurrent licenses, and people could farm out those licenses between the different teams, and data could be accessible. Right? At Flipkart and Myntra, we built, for example, our own data visualization tools. We didn't buy a tool from outside, and they were very simple Java-based web tools where anybody with a login could log in, ask for access from a dashboard owner, and get access to the data. So the tools were never the blocker for data democratization. Right? What was a blocker was the mindset that it's a question of trust, right? What data do you expose to your employees without the fear of the data leaking out of your official domain and going to competitors? That is what has prevented data democratization. Tools have never blocked it. Maybe today, with some of the advanced visualization, it makes explanation of trends and insights easier, specifically to a set of people who are not used to seeing large amounts of data in tabular formats or simple charts. But apart from that, I think data democratization is probably still very low at most places. And that's simply because companies do not want to expose the data for fear of data leaks. A lot of that is valid as well. Increasingly, as you see, most of the data is a lot of the data that we collect, especially digital services, is PII, personally identifiable information. And any breach with regards to any PII can have severe legal and reputational consequences. So companies are right as well that you need to mask data, you need to create levels of authentication and access where everybody does not have access to sensitive data. So I think that part is what determines who gets to access what data rather than the tools.
Got it. Cool. I think with that, with that data availability question, I think we are all warmed up. So I'll just, focus more on the analytics for startups questions. So one thing I want to ask you is what role does analytics is playing in your current company, Goda? And can you share some of the real life use cases wherein analytics has stolen the show?
Right. So the key role that analytics plays in any company, right? Not only my current company, is enabling kind of people or the decision makers in the company make the right decisions by converting that data into insights, into things that can be narrated as facts and stories, right? So when I say decisions, I've seen decisions being made at a very strategic level in terms of, which direction do we need to take this product in, to a very tactical level, why is this happening, kind of a root cause analysis, and what is this telling us, or what is the result of this particular experiment. So the range of function that analytics does in an organization varies from very strategic to very tactical decision making, right? And in terms of stealing the show, often the most the use case that you can connect with the most, and that the leadership can connect with the most, is the understanding the end customer, right? Whether it is about what makes a customer go away or what makes a customer delighted, and what are the patterns we are seeing in the customer behavior, being able to convert data into a very good narratable story and helping leadership understand, in which direction things are going. I think whenever it is about understanding the customer well in a data-driven manner, I've seen that not only in the current company, but at multiple places kind of stealing the show. Right.
Got it. So, Ankur, you have any real life use case that you would like to pitch in?
I think what Goda said is sort of spot on. There are two major places where analytics makes a lot of difference in any organization. First is being a validator. A lot of times, a lot of decisions which sound like management may want to take those decisions, but they need some kind of validation, and data provides factual validation, unbiased support, or non-support to that decision, and that helps a lot for the management to come back and say that, okay, like we are heading in the right direction, or we were looking at a completely different picture. And the second thing which data really helps is influencing. A lot of times, using the narratives that come out of data, you can potentially influence a lot of functions, pretty much every function in an organization. And that's why I like to see data sitting in the middle, like a nervous system, and sort of like pushing insights in different functions and sort of trying to influence them by telling them the ground reality, telling them what the data is telling, without like taking away their biases, taking away a lot of false assumptions, which is very easy to seep in. I think that role is really, really critical, and that sort of provides this different kind of a lens, and like keep the ship in the right direction. And that's what we use a lot. Like we typically use hypothesis testing, and also like a lot of our roadmap is also decided by what the data is telling us, product roadmap. So I think it's been a pretty integral part of almost every decision that we make.
Got it. Sure. So now I want to focus more on the real problem that most of the founders that they face. It's about building the analytics infrastructure in place. So Deepayan, what approach should a startup should take while building its analytics infrastructure from scratch? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so there are two parts to this, right? There's one, the technological stack. There's a technology stack that you need to choose, and the second is the team that you need to build up. So this is the technology stack that you need to choose. Pretty much, it's not an analytics only decision. The CTO will take a decision broadly for every single portion of the tech stack. So the first decision obviously is whether to go cloud or whether to go on-prem. The second decision is, which 99% today, I guess, startups are choosing the cloud. Once you've chosen the cloud provider, it probably will then narrow down your choices to the kind of analytics stack that you can use. So if you're on AWS, you potentially will be on S3, Redshift, and possibly building a data warehouse of your own if you want, using, let's say, open source tools like Hadoop, etc. Depending on your data volumes, you might want to look at other tools like Spark, PySpark, Spark Scala. But that's entirely a call that the CTO and the head of analytics can take, right? So that tech stack broadly is, as I said, it depends upon what the larger tech stack decision that the CTO has taken. The second part is your team, and in your team, you then need to build out three capabilities primarily. First capability would be around what I would call the data analysis, which is taking care of the ETL and the BI. So the extraction, transformation, and loading, which is conversion of the data into some sort of a analyzable aggregate, and the BI reporting, which is the simple reports and dashboards, which pretty much are 70% of what the senior executives will be looking at, right? They will be looking at plan versus actuals. They'll be looking at trends and so on and so forth. Then the second piece, the second set of the team you need to build out is the business analysts, who I would call are the bridge between the business users and the large analytics team. So they are the guys who should be able to convert the business requirements into analytical requirements, work with the analysts, work with the data scientists, and deploy the final solutions that they have created in the business context, whether it be a systemic deployment or if it's like a one-off decision-making support system, right? And then you need the data scientists. So these are the team members whose core skill sets are in model building. And potentially you'll probably start off with a couple of them. You might even want to start off with a couple of consultants, because to begin with, your data set might not have you might not be so mature enough to require a team of data scientists. And if you hire them, they might just get frustrated and leave. So you might want to start off with there's a lot of companies these days that are providing data science support. There are a lot of very good freelance data scientists who are working for at a project level. And once you have that data pipeline set, once you have a pipeline of projects set, then you can consider hiring data scientists full time. And basically, the second decision then you have to take is where to fit this org into. So my view is that this org should either fit into the CFO's org or the head of strategies org, because you want to keep this org non-functional. Want to prevent any functional bias from creeping it, and hence you don't want it to report into, let's say, the head of product or the head of marketing or something like that. And yeah, those are the three main calls that you want to take, and then you're set with it.
Sure. Anything you want to add, Goda or Ankur, to what Deepan just said?
Yeah, I think Deepan's put across all the points well. So I think the first stage to reach is, basic trackability of the business. That's the first milestone. And for that, both the data engineering or the ETL pipelines, what we called, and the basic dashboards and the reporting systems are kind of the first milestone. And that also helps build the confidence, in this analytic function of, the leadership, right? Because you're able to see the numbers, track the business. And then the next part is, before you go into, automated decision making where your systems are making decisions, enable a few analytical decisions from the business teams, and hence sitting closer to the CEO or the strategy office is important, where some of those showing results builds even more confidence to be data driven, that, data gave us the right decisions. Then the third stage is when you can really trust a machine to make those decisions, right? So that is where I think that data scientists would come in, and ideally their work is more on the engineering side and sitting closer to the engineering, because rather than helping people make decisions, now we are making machines make those decisions. And that's kind of the third stage of maturity, where you can trust the data and the AI systems to take over, right, in some way. So some kind of milestones along that journey.
Absolutely. Ankur, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on what stage your startup is in. Your data strategy pretty much depends on that. If you're just starting up and you're looking for product market fit, you probably don't need to invest so much in data pipelines and engineering yet. It's like maybe just get Google Analytics in and talk to your customers, because they're still finding product market fit. Like, according to me, no data can really match if you can talk to each and every one of your customers personally. Like, the kind of insights that you can get is not something that you can find from looking at data. But as you scale up and sort of like you start getting thousands of customers, and then it becomes impossible to really talk to each one of them personally. I think that's the time where you really think about hiring the lead of your data team, or thinking about what kind of stack you want. But then again, I think it's a gradual journey. I would say that if your core capability is not data, like if you're not selling machine learning, if let's say if you're selling clothing, or if you're selling soft, like SaaS or something like that, then data is something that you should gradually build as you're scaling up, and gradually build your capabilities, instead of investing into too many things too early. I think that's a caution that every startup founder should say. What is the right time to really invest in data science? Sometimes it may just like not pay off as much as you would have hoped for.
Absolutely. So basically it depends on the stage where the startup is at. And so for 0 to 1, I think this problem might not be there, but I think from 1 to X, this problem might arise at an early stage, depending on the volume of data that the company is dealing with. So one of the questions related to this is, as company size grows, so is their data, and most commonly they come across this question whether to build or whether to buy a tool, a ready-made tool, and whether to go with an open source platform or whether to go with a paid platform. So, what would you suggest for a startup, for a growing startup to invest in?
So I would say that if you, this is a very common decision. It is going to come in pretty much everything, every decision that are going to make around technology, right? Build versus buy. Like for instance, you could not use AWS and have all the servers on-prem, right? That's also an option today, but it's not a great option nowadays. It's far more cost effective to go with a cloud data center. So similarly, I feel like until you are, so one, if your core product is not data science related, so let's say if you're selling clothes, right? That's not, you're not really selling data science, you're selling very high quality clothes. Your clothing quality matters. That's really what you're selling. And if you're doing that, then at least in the early stages, or even like until you really have achieved scale, I would go for buying, because I every startup will have very limited resources, limited funds to deploy, and you would as much as possible want to deploy all the people you have, which you have really hired painstakingly to improve your core product and improve your product market fit and make sure that you get revenues up and coming, and most of your engineering should be focusing towards driving that, and the data systems should as much as possible be bought, and not spend your core capabilities into that. But as you scale up and you realize that the third party tooling is not really matching up, there are now constraints which you just cannot live with, I think that is the time to really start considering building this in-house. But I think for any startup, that place is a very long way out there.
Got it. So now, because this session is all about advanced analytics, so I want to touch upon the advanced aspect of it. So I want to understand, Deepa, in your perspective, like there are so many, I mean, data modeling capabilities have, gone to a all new level. Predictive analytics has come into picture. It has, shaped companies, drastically. So what's your take on this? I mean, what is the advanced thing that has happened recently in analytics space?
Yeah, there's not one thing, right? There's so many. And essentially, see, at the heart of it is something that Ankur touched upon, is that especially in digital businesses, the number of decisions you have to take per second have exploded. In a lot of offline businesses, the number of decisions that any executive has to take is limited, and hence they can do without very deep analysis. They can do without automated decision making. Today, they can't, right? So in my example, for instance, on Myntra, we have a DAU of well over 8 million. And each of them probably has a couple of sessions a day, right? So we're looking at 16, 17 million sessions. In each of those sessions, the system has to decide a multitude of variables, which merchandising banners to show on a given search string, which products to show in what order. Once a customer is looking at a product page, which product to show as part of the recommendation module. So all of these decisions cannot be taken in a manual fashion. This is simply impossible. So you have to automate it. And because you have to automate it now, and then automating something like this, it becomes difficult to do it in a very rudimentary fashion. So if I want to take the right decision in terms of which product to recommend given another product that the customer is seeing, there has to be some logic behind it. And that logic is given by the machine learning algorithm in this case. Right? Similarly, there are use cases for homepage personalization. If you land up on the Myntra homepage versus I land up, if I know that your profile is different, your brand choice, your price point choice is different than mine, it doesn't make sense for Myntra to show both of us the same product categories when it knows our product categories are different, and hence they need to know what our probability to buy is and use that and automate the decisions. So I don't know if you got the answer to your question, but essentially today, because of the number of decisions that people have to take, automation is no longer a choice, right? At that level, once you've reached that level of decision making, you have to automate, and once you automate, the algorithm that is behind it, you might as well have the more efficient algorithm because that helps you make money or save money. So then advanced, and whatever that advanced analytics may be, it might be a simple random forest model, or it could be a fairly advanced deep learning model if the use case demands it. The choice, see, as an analyst and as a data scientist, we are all technique agnostic, right? I mean, it depends upon the business problem. It depends upon the business problem. It depends upon the data available. Every problem can be different, can be classified into one of classification, prediction, optimization, etc. And then you choose the best technique available. Does that? I mean, hopefully that was. It was a long and rambling answer, but hopefully it did.
Yeah. You want to add anything to it, Goda?
I think, though we call it very advanced, at least when we look at, while building the models, one of the experiences has been the simplest or the baseline model you build actually solves 60 to 80% of the problem, right? But as you scale, the last mile becomes more and more important. That, at a high scale, even a 2% delta that you can get means a lot to the business, right? So, and hence the need for more sophistication or need for making it more advanced increases as the company scales. But in the initial stages, when you have just started off, you leveraging data science for some of those automated decisions, some of the simplest models help you achieve all the low-hanging fruits in some.
Sure. Now I want to touch upon one of the very crucial aspects, which is about the identifying the key metrics. So what are the metrics that one should track beyond the traditional BI metrics to uncover trends and gain insights that are usually ignored otherwise? Goda, your take on this? So what are the usual metrics that you measure on a day-to-day basis?
Right. Actually, on metrics, see, at a company level, definitely there will become L0 metrics to track. But when we think of metrics and we call it metric thinking, it is more about looking at the organization and saying what are the different functions or levers we have to play, right, to achieve the company's goal. Now, it could be a marketing function, it could be something around user experience, it could be something around logistics, whatever that is, right? Now, every decision you're making or every lever you're using, we need to be thinking of some level of isolated metric to track for that, which goes up and goes down along with how that lever is performing, right? Otherwise, what happens is often with interacting metrics, you are doing tons of initiatives and you're not able to kind of isolate and say which initiative is working and which is not working. So rather than saying these are the metrics we should be tracking, every time we are doing something new or making some decision, we need to think upfront, if at all we do this, what is that metric that we will track that will tell us this is working, right?
Sure. Anything to add here, Ankur?
So I think, yeah, metrics depend on the domain or the function that you're really looking at. And I think the key thing to note here is that there should not be metrics overdose. It's very easy to build dashboard with like a lot of metrics, a lot of charts, but very hard to make sense out of it. I think a lot of thought should go into what your KPI should be, and instead of rushing into building a lot of metrics in. Typically, I would say that every function should try to figure out what are their top 3 KPIs. And this can be at any level. Management can have top 3 KPIs, and then let's say a particular team can have top 3 KPIs, and then their sub teams can then individually have top 3 KPIs. And that's how an organization is structured, where while the management cares about revenue, the sub teams have a lot of different measures that they can take. Like, for instance, as Dipan was saying, like it's a propensity to click on a product. Now, that is in some way tied to the revenue at the end, right? But then that particular team who is looking at tracking that propensity, for them, that is the KPI. Whereas for the super senior management, they are tracking revenue. And then there's this bunch of teams who are working on different levers and all of them trying to basically support or like impact the top level KPIs. And that's typically how you would look at it. And it's important to not get overwhelmed by too many metrics, but just focus on 2 or 3 main metrics and really track them and really try to improve those instead of getting boiled down into tons of charts, most of which will not make any sense to you.
Sure. So many a times what happens is, people at startups pick a tool for a specific use case, and down the line use cases evolve. The tool is never suitable for that use case, for the newer use cases, and then they keep on evolving their data stack, right? So now my question to you, Dipayan, how do you optimize your technology stack to incorporate modern use cases like customer churn, predictive analytics, fraud detection, or even supply chain management?
Okay, so there are 3 or 4 components of your tech stack when it comes to analytics, right? So there's the data lake and the data warehouse, which essentially is the data storage. Then you have what you might call the data transformation layer, where you're taking the stored data and converting it into some meaningful aggregate, right? Then there's the data visualization type, and there is a set of applications that you use to create models, test models in a test environment, and then there's a production environment where you deploy them, right? All of these are fairly fungible in the sense that today, if I have a ML platform where I can open a Python notebook and create a Python model, tomorrow churn is an application, right? Churn is an application of a model. I could be running a random forest model and creating a churn. I could be using the random forest model to do a product propensity model as well. So, as I said, all models can be classified into a classification model, a prediction model, a time series model maybe, and the operations, the optimization model. Today, I don't see a problem of taking into, unless there's a very, very specific use case. Like now you need to build a very, very complicated GAN model, right? You might need a bunch of GPUs and all of that, and a separate infrastructure for that. But as I think Goda was saying, 99% of the use cases are solved by simple models, right? Simple bagging boosting models solve them. So I really don't see a problem with the tech stack not being able to keep up. What might happen is if you have sudden rapid growth, your data platform might not be able to scale unless you built it for scale, where let's say you go from a few 100,000 transactions a day to, let's say, a couple of million transactions over a period of 6 to 7 months. You might start facing issues on the data platform side and just the processing side. But yeah, I won't be too worried about the modeling side of the tools not being able to scale. Most of those tools, specific tools that you need, are fairly easily integratable to your overall data.
Yes. Anything to add, Goda?
No, I think, what Dipan covered is kind of bang on this question.
Perfect. So one thing is, like, today we see a lot of companies are talking about implementing AI, ML in their internal or external projects. Now, what's your take on that, and what impact do you think it will have on analytics in future? And also, as the entire AI ML space is shaping up, so what do you think the impact it will have on analytics going forward, and also the overall startup ecosystem per se?
I think, when we talk of AI and ML, of course, they are very hyped words, right? I see the problem that, many startups, when you're in that journey, you start from data to problem, saying, now I've collected a lot of data, what problem can I solve? But I think the clarity of whether I need AI ML or will I need it in future can be there on day one, right? Because you have a set of goals, you have a set of problems you will face, you have the levers. Today you might be doing it, manually or, based on some rules and intuition. At some point in scale, we'll not be able to do that, right? So I think that whether you should apply AI or ML, that clarity needs to be there right from the beginning, that one day we need to apply for these set of problems, because either you need to have that as, founders, or you need to start by hiring from the top, or what you call it, a person who can do that, translation of, business problems to that. But the problem I see is you start with data and you say, now I have a lot of data and I want to solve AI ML problems because I have a lot of data. And then you hire a set of data scientists, who are enthusiastic to kind of build models. And given the data, you might end up solving the wrong problem and not have much impact on the business, right? So I think having that clarity of why do I need AI ML is very crucial before applying AI.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think we will take one last question, and then we will jump on to the Q&A round. So I want to ask, businesses has in this recent lockdown and COVID times. So businesses have moved drastically during this period, and with respect to the analytics use cases, I want to understand if there are any specific changes that has happened with your business during this crazy time, and what was your response to this change? Maybe Deepan, if you have to start with.
See, our use cases really haven't changed. So I think we're still solving the same problems as we were before. From an analytics point of view, right? There have been some ops related changes that people have had to make, especially around delivery. As you're aware, that you cannot make a delivery to a customer. Warehouses, at the point in time when only 30-40% attendance was allowed, you had to maintain a certain distance. People had to automate a lot of the shop floor processes, so to speak. So most of the innovation that has happened, at least in Myntra's case, has had to happen on the shop floor, the last mile, the logistics, the core operations part of the business. I cannot think of multiple different problems. You're solving pretty much the same problem, because the business has not fundamentally changed for us. We are still a digital business. We were a digital business. I think your question might be very, very relevant to folks who are primarily offline earlier and have had to shift to online, and hence are seeing a new set of challenges. But for us, we anyway were online.
Sure. Any change, for Swiggy's business, Goda? Because what we have seen is, the data models that have been built by the companies. So they were built for a specific set of data volumes. And few businesses drastically, taken a jump because of the digitization that has happened during the COVID times, and a lot of data models have failed. So I want to understand whether something has happened in case of Swiggy, or some changes that has happened with respect to analytics.
So, like Deepan mentioned, Swiggy is a very ops heavy kind of a company, right? So from that perspective, most of the problems that data science and analytics are solving are also ops problems, right? And hence, for us, some of the use cases also changed. Just to give a small example, like whenever we are kind of assigning and sending delivery executives to the restaurants, now suddenly we cannot send many delivery executives to the restaurant because of the crowding situation. So we had to kind of limit how many delivery executives are simultaneously present at the restaurant, right? So we had to kind of build that intelligence to kind of control that in our optimization modules. Or we had to build like image recognition ones to check if the delivery executives are wearing their masks for random checks, right? So these are some of the use cases that came because of the COVID period. That said, the data distribution also changed a lot, right? So during the COVID, you would have seen a lot of migration of people to their hometowns, and the traffic on the roads were lesser. So each of this also meant kind of shocks in the data, where the distribution of data is continuously changing, which means whatever models we have, which were built on probably a pre-COVID thing, we have to continuously kind of keep up to speed and keep learning from the new data to, keep it updated and kind of respond to the situation. So from that perspective, it did have a lot of changes for the team.
Cool. Ankur, any input on this aspect?
I think InstaMojo was in a pretty interesting shape because our entire business is online, right? There is no component of the business which is offline, and COVID-19 was more of a positive impact for our business because more and more small businesses wanted to come online. They wanted to collect contactless payments. A lot of people who were dealing with cash, checks, bank transfers, that basically got massive disruption, and we saw swathes of people trying to come online immediately. I think that sort of so we instead saw surge in our acquisition volumes. I think that's where the operations were, like, let's say, more choked, because like we suddenly got this huge inburst of, like, especially in a few months after the lockdown sort of eased down a little bit, and people are like, okay, it's not that dramatic, but then I have to go contactless, I have to go cashless. I think that's where it sort of benefited us, and in terms of like we didn't really face any challenges per se, because the entire business was already completely digital. There was no social aspect in our business.
Sure. All right. So now it's time for a Q&A round. So if you have any questions, then you can submit them in the Q&A window, and I'll just take them one by one. So we have quite a few questions that we have got. So let me read them one by one, and I'll direct it to one of the panelists here. So the first question is, companies are generating humongous amount of data. So how do you leverage this big data for growth hacking? Maybe Dipayan, you would like to answer this?
So, firstly, growth hacking is another of those things which has multiple definitions, multiple places. So I'll kind of answer. So at Myntra, growth hacking works in two connected ways. One is creation of hypotheses, and the second is doing an experiment to test out that hypothesis. So the hypothesis, I'm just making a silly one, is let's make the size of the text on the buy now button bigger, and that will lead to more cart to PDP funnel increase, right? So once that hypothesis is set, the data, basically you run it out in a A/B format and then do an A/B test to check whether that's working or not. There are other growth hacking avenues like CRM, bank partnerships, affiliates, etc. There you kind of look at past data to see what is the CLTV by CAC ratio that you're getting through these channels and whether that makes sense or not. And then optimize the given spend that you have across these channels to get the maximum number of customers for the minimum, or rather the best customers for the given acquisition cost. So those are a few ways in which we've used data for growth hacking. But as I said, growth hacking means very, very different things to many different companies. So a company like Swiggy, for instance, could be seeing it in very, very differently.
Sure. Goda, your take on this?
I think I agree. I think most of it is related to, some hypothesis or some idea, an experiment designed to test it and kind of evaluate it. And also at some level, there could be multiple ideas that, either your growth team or the product team want to kind of try out, helping in recommending or choosing the right one based on supporting data from the past, right? Probably, what kind of promotion you need to run, what kind of text you need to put and things like that. So one is in kind of recommending the right ones, the other is in terms of running it, testing out and kind of measuring those and taking those decisions.
Sure. I'll just read out the second question. So what is the right time for early stage and growth startups to start investing in analytics and start building data platforms? Ankur?
So as I mentioned previously, if you are in the product market fit space, you are still getting customers who you can able to do personal connect. And you like, when you start a business, you know every customer. You know that who are your first 100 customers. You probably call them, understand them, and that's how you start a business. And I think until you can do that, do not invest in data science. Just talk to your customers, be understand them in person. But once it goes into thousands of customers, once you know that you are getting a consistent inflow of new acquisitions, you're acquiring swaths of customers every day, and this is something like in the venture capitalist parlance, this is a stage where you actually raise your series A round. And I think when you are trying to raise your series A or have recently raised your series A, probably that's where you are really going to need to set up a data science team or like analytics team. That's the right time to hire a head of data, start taking decisions around what should data stack should look like, and like think more long term. But before that, I think your entire focus should be how to prove product market fit, how to get your first batch of customers in, and how to create value for your product, nothing else.
Got it. So the next question is how to deal with sparse data in the early stage startup and how to separate important data from all the noise. Deepan?
I can answer.
Yes, Ankur, please go ahead.
I can answer that because our company is the one with sparse data, not Myntra or Swiggy. I think it's very common when you are an early stage startup and you're especially if you're B2B startup, right? Because you're not getting millions of businesses using you. Typically, your user base would be in hundreds or maybe in thousands if you're lucky, right? And I think that's where data becomes sparse, and that's where you have to really figure out what kind of problems are you solving. Like, do you really need that much data to solve your problems? And if you really need that much data and you don't have it, try to enrich your data from multiple other sources. Today, there are various ways of enriching your data by looking at social media, looking at if you're in a B2B space, like what are the employees of your businesses looking like, and so on. So I think while sparse data is a big problem, if you're trying to do prediction or trying to build sophisticated models, you should also ask how critical it is to build a sophisticated model. As Goda said previously, sometimes just very simple solutions can work for most of the problems. Actually, you'll realize that for most business problems, you don't need to build a fancy model. Like I've seen many problems getting solved by just a bar chart, really. If it's done the right way and it's it understands the problem and answers it the right way.
Sure. One last question to all the panelists. So what is that one key piece of advice that you would give to startup founders or people who are setting up the analytics functions at growth stage data?
Okay, I'll go first. So I think the one piece of advice I would say is don't delay while I know Ankur has been harping upon get the PMF first and then, and I agree with that broadly. But the thing about growth stage startup is that you go from a couple of 100,000 transactions to a couple of million transactions in like a blink of an eye. And we've seen that problem at Flipkart. So be prepared beforehand to deploy some sort of a platform as soon as you're hitting the bottom of the hockey stick, because from the bottom of the hockey stick to the top of the hockey stick, you simply will not have time to breathe. We ran into that problem around the 2013-2014 time when we hit big billion day and most of our systems melted down. Then we realized it. Hopefully, most people can learn from us and preempt that meltdown.
Sure. Goda, what will be your advice?
I think I mentioned earlier also in this conversation, which is about, yeah, data science can probably wait, but data strategy should not, right? Which is right from day one, having a good view of what my business is about and what is the blueprint of in the growth stage, when we hit that, the slope of hockey stick, what kind of problems will become important to me. Some level of upfront thinking on it will not only help us collect the right data points, but also, start, building those pipelines, even when you're hit that lower end of that hockey stick. It's not only important to build the data platform, but also to have the clarity of where will I apply analytics or data science and for what problems it will be important.
Absolutely. Ankur, your advice, please.
I would say that if you are a founder of a startup, don't treat data as second citizen. As Dipayan said, still like most companies still do that. They treat data as, even scaled up companies are like, okay, we will do data later. Let's roll this out first. We'll figure out about data later. Don't do that mistake. If you do not get your data sorted, you'll be a blind founder. You have no visibility into what's really going on, and you need a lot of visibility into what's up in your business. And in whatever format you collected data, whether it's like very, very simple note taking, or whether it's like sophisticated analytics, in whatever form, data is critical from day one. So some form of data collection is critical, and you should always treat this data as first class citizen and not a second class citizen. That'll help you throughout the journey, and also like not catch you by surprise at any time, if you that position.
Absolutely. Thank you, Goda, Dipayan, and Ankur, for sharing insights with all of us. And thanks to all the attendees for joining us today. That's it for this session. If you have any questions or feedback or suggestions about this session, then please write to me at parag, PARAG, @hebodata.com. Just for your information, we are launching a marketing analytics masterclass for marketing and growth analysts. So this is a specially curated course by global marketing thought leaders, wherein they will be sharing their experiences, latest marketing, analytics trends, tips, and strategies that they have come across and tried out. And it's a completely free course, so you can sign up for this course by registering on our website, which is www.hebodata.com/decode. And for all our upcoming events, you can check the events section on our website. All right, then thank you so much, guys. So till then, see you for our next session. Till then, take care and stay safe.